It started with a $5,000 dinner check and a single, cruel word, 0. But it ended with the complete and total destruction of a billionaire's empire. When the infamous tycoon Barnaby Colton told his waitress, Alexa, "I don't tip people like you," he had no idea who he was really talking to. He thought he was crushing a powerless server. He didn't know he was speaking to the one person on earth who held the single secret to his downfall. This is the story of how one woman's final words, spoken in a moment of defiance, ignited a firestorm that cost a powerful man absolutely everything. The Gilded Quill was not a restaurant, it was a performance. Located on the 64th floor of a gleaming Manhattan skyscraper, its windows looked down on the city lights like scattered diamonds. The air smelled of old money, truffles, and a faint, floral anxiety. The patrons were the kind of people who didn't look at price tags, and the staff were the kind of people who were trained to become invisible. Alexa knew the performance well. By day, she was Alexa Kinsley, a scholarship student in her 3rd year at Hadford University School of Law, buried under casebooks on corporate fraud and tort reform. By night, she was just Alexa, a server at the Gilded Quill, employee -47. She needed this job. She needed it more than she needed sleep, which she rarely got, or a social life, which was non-existent. Her younger brother Leo was 200 miles away in a specialized clinic in Denver, breathing recycled air through a tube. Leo's cystic fibrosis was a relentless, expensive monster, and Alexa's scholarship only covered her tuition. The Gilded Quill, with its potential for massive tips from hedge fund managers and socialites, was the only thing keeping Leo in that clinic. So Alexa performed. She smiled until her cheeks ached. She memorized the absurdly complex daily specials. The pan-seared ortolan is prepared in the traditional Mitterrand style, sir, and navigated the minefield of elite egos. Alexa, Table 4 needs their water glasses filled before they ask, snapped Mr. Henderson, the restaurant's manager. Henderson was a thin, perpetually sweating man whose entire career was built on kissing the boots of the wealthy. And for heaven's sake, your bun. It's loose. Fix it. Alexa resisted the urge to point out that she'd just single-handedly managed a 12-top wine tasting. Yes, Mr. Henderson, right away. Her station partner, Miguel, slid up beside her at the service bar, polishing a glass. "Don't let him get to you," he murmured, not looking up. "He's only on edge because the white whale is coming in tonight." Alexa paused, her water pitcher half full. "The white whale?" Table 7, 8 p.m. Barnaby Colton. A cold pebble dropped in Alexa's stomach. Everyone knew Barnaby Colton. He wasn't just New York rich, he was global rich. Colton Capital was a behemoth, a private equity firm that bought and dismantled companies like a child pulling legs off spiders. Colton himself was a tabloid fixture, famous for his ruthless business practices, his string of supermodel ex-wives, and his legendary temper. "He's in your section," Miguel added, his eyes full of pity. "Good luck." Alexa's jaw tightened. A man like Colton meant a check that could be thousands of dollars. A 20% tip on that would cover Leo's medication for a month. But it also meant navigating a man who, according to restaurant legend, had once made a server cry for presenting the fish fork incorrectly. "I can handle him," Alexa said, more to herself than to Miguel. "It's just another table." But as 8 p.m. approached, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. The lights seemed to dim, the background chatter dropping to a reverent hush. Mr. Henderson was visibly vibrating by the maitre d's stand, smoothing his tie every 3 seconds. Then he arrived. Barnaby Colton moved not like a man, but like a force of nature. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a custom suit that probably cost more than Alexa's entire law school debt. and he wore an expression of profound, crushing boredom. He was flanked by 2 other men in similar suits and a woman who looked more like a sculpted ice statue than a person. "Mr. Colton?" "Welcome, welcome," Henderson gushed, bowing slightly. "Your usual table is ready." Colton ignored him, scanning the room with dismissive eyes. "Is the air conditioning broken? It's stuffy. Fix it." "Right away, Mr. Colton," Henderson squeaked, motioning frantically to a busboy. Colton and his party were seated at table 7, Alexa's station. She took a deep, steadying breath, plastered on her professional smile, and picked up 4 menus. "Just get through the next 2 hours," she whispered to herself. For Leo. She approached the table. "Good evening. My name is Alexa, and I will be your server tonight. May I start you with some of our mineral?" Colton held up a hand, not even looking at her. He was busy scrolling through his phone. "Don't talk. Just bring me a bottle of the 98 Lafitte, and don't try to pass off a 99. I'll know." Alexa's smile didn't waver. "An excellent choice, sir. Right away." As she turned, she heard him mutter to his companion, "They're letting children work here now?" The pebble in her stomach turned to ice. It was going to be a long night. The dinner was a masterclass in psychological torment. Barnaby Colton seemed to have a 6th sense for Alexa's breaking point, and he hovered just below it, a shark circling in the dark. He sent back the $4,000 bottle of Chateau Lafitte. "This is corked," he declared after a tiny sip. Alexa, who had expertly decanted it, knew it wasn't. Mr. Henderson rushed over, his face pale. He sniffed the cork, sipped the wine, and gave a pathetic little cough. "Sir, this seems to be a perfect bottle." Colton leveled a dead-eyed stare at him. "Are you calling me a liar?" No, Mr. Colton, absolutely not." Henderson snatched the bottle. "Alexa, retrieve another, and be careful this time." Alexa spent the next 10 minutes in the cellar with the sommelier, who confirmed the first bottle was pristine. "He just likes to do this," the sommelier sighed, handing her a new bottle. "He likes to watch people squirm." When she returned and presented the new bottle, Colton waved her away. "I've lost the taste for it. Bring me a Scotch, Macallan 72, and if you have to check the price, you can't afford it." His guests followed his lead. They were loud, arrogant, and relentlessly demanding. They snapped their fingers. They dirtied napkins and threw them on the floor for her to pick up. They changed their orders 3 times. Through it all, Alexa remained a fortress of professional calm. She refilled water glasses, cleared plates, and described the raspberry tarragon sorbet with the same placid smile, her mind 1,000 miles away, calculating drug copays. "You know," the woman at the table, who had introduced herself as Genevieve, drawled, "I think I saw you on the subway." Alexa, placing a fresh fork, froze. "It's possible, Mum. It's just so quaint," Genevieve said, her voice dripping with artificial pity. "To think you have to ride that thing every day, with all the people." One of the men laughed. "Don't be cruel, Jen. She probably enjoys it. A good look at what she'll be doing for the rest of her life." Alexa's knuckles were white on the silver tray she was holding. She could feel Miguel watching her from across the room, his expression pained. She wanted to say something. She wanted to quote the section of the New York Civil Rights Act that protected employees from harassment. She wanted to tell them that her subway reading was a casebook on the very corporate loopholes that allowed men like Colton to exist. But she thought of Leo. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen, ma'am?" she asked, her voice perfectly even. Colton finally looked up from his phone, his blue eyes as flat and cold as a glacier. He studied her for a long moment, not as a person, but as an object, a piece of furniture that had suddenly made a noise. "Yes," he said. "The check. And then I want you to disappear." The meal totaled $5,128.50. Alexa printed the leather-bound check holder and placed it discreetly on the table. She walked away, her entire body thrumming with a mixture of relief and repressed fury. The performance was almost over. She busied herself at the service station, her back to the table. She heard the scrape of a pen, a low laugh from Colton, and the sound of the group getting up. They filed past her, Colton in the lead, without a single glance in her direction. Alexa waited the obligatory 30 seconds before approaching the table. She opened the check holder. Inside there was no cash. The credit card slip was signed with Colton's arrogant, slashing signature. And on the tip line, in thick black ink, he had written a large, aggressive 0. Alexa's breath hitched. A 0 tip wasn't just an insult, it was a financial disaster. It meant, due to the restaurant's tip-out policy, that she would have to pay the busboys, bartenders, and kitchen staff a percentage of Colton's bill out of her own pocket. She would be paying to have served this man. For a second, the room tilted. Leo's face flashed in her mind. No, she couldn't let this happen. Following restaurant policy for non-tippers, she picked up the check holder and hurried after the group, catching them at the elevator bank where Mr. Henderson was fawning over them. "Mr. Colton?" "Sir?" Colton turned, his annoyance clear. "What?" Alexa held out the check holder, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice firm. "Sir, I just wanted to ensure the service was to your satisfaction this evening. A 0 tip generally indicates a severe problem." Mr. Henderson looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "Alexa, what are you doing?" he hissed. Colton looked at the check holder, then at Alexa's face. A slow, deeply unpleasant smirk spread across his lips. He was enjoying this. He leaned in, his voice low, but carrying in the quiet foyer. "The service was what I expected from a place like this," he said. "And what does that mean, sir?" Alexa pressed, her law student brain refusing to accept the vague answer. "It means," he said, his voice dropping with contempt as he looked her up and down, "that I don't tip. Period." He paused, then added the words that would change everything. "Let me be perfectly clear. I don't tip people like you." The silence that followed was absolute. It was so quiet Alexa could hear the distant ding of the service elevator. Mr. Henderson had gone from pale to a sickly, mottled grey. "People like me," Alexa repeated. The words felt alien in her mouth. Colton's smirk widened. He was a predator who had just seen his prey twitch. He clearly mistook her stunned repetition for weakness. "Yes, people like you," he sneered, gesturing vaguely at her uniform. "People who take orders. People who will never be anything more than what you are right now. Service. You're a function, not a person. Why would I tip a function?" One of his associates, a man named Jeffrey, chuckled. "He's got you there, sweetheart." Alexa's training, her professional smile, her carefully constructed mask of invisibility, it all evaporated. The exhaustion of 1,000 16-hour days, the terror of Leo's last hospital visit, and the fiery indignation of her legal mind all coalesced into a single, sharp point of absolute clarity. She was no longer employee Centre 47. She was Alexa Kinsley. "Alexa!" Henderson practically shrieked, grabbing her arm. "Apologize to Mr. Colton right now." Alexa pulled her arm free. She looked past her frantic manager, past the smirking associates, and locked eyes with Barnaby Colton. The fear was gone. "No," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the expensive, perfumed air like a shard of glass. "What did you just say to me?" Colton's amusement vanished, replaced by a flash of disbelief and rage. "She's fired! You're fired, Alexa!" Henderson yelled, pushing at her. "Get your things. You are fired." "It doesn't matter," Alexa said, her gaze still fixed on the billionaire. This was it. The performance was over. She was already fired. She had nothing left to lose. "You're right, Mr. Colton," she said, her voice ringing with a sudden, terrible authority. "You don't tip people like me. Because you can't." Colton frowned. "Can't? I can buy this entire building. I can buy you." "No, you can't," Alexa said, taking a step closer. The law student had just taken the stand. "You don't tip us because people like me, the people who serve you, drive you, and clean up after you, we see you for what you really are. We see you when the cameras are off, and we have integrity. We earn our money honestly." "You're done." Henderson was shoving her now, pushing her toward the service corridor. "Security." Alexa was moving, but she wasn't finished. She looked back over her shoulder. And this was the moment. These were her final words. "But I know exactly who you are, Mr. Colton. I'm a law student at Hadford. My clinic is representing a group of families in Pine Creek, Wyoming." Colton's face, which had been a mask of purple rage, went utterly, terrifyingly still. The color drained from his cheeks. "Our clients," Alexa continued, her voice gaining power, "are farmers whose land was poisoned. They were forced into bankruptcy by a shell corporation called Apex Green Solutions, a company that promised a new solar plant and left a toxic pit." Jeffrey, his associate, hissed, "Barnaby, let's go." "That shell corporation," Alexa called out, as Henderson finally managed to shove her through the service door. "It traces back through 3 holding companies in the Cayman Islands, directly to Colton Capital." The elevator doors dinged open. Colton and his party stood frozen. "So you keep your tip," Alexa shouted, the service door swinging shut. "I don't want your blood money, but you should know. People like me are the ones who study your frauds, and we're the ones who are going to put you in prison." The door slammed, plunging her into the sudden quiet of the back hallway. She was breathing heavily, her entire body shaking. She had just accused one of the most powerful men in the world of a massive criminal conspiracy, and she had done it in the lobby of a 5-star restaurant. She leaned against the wall, the check holder clattering from her hand. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Leo." Then, from the shadows by the kitchen entrance, Miguel stepped out. His face was as white as a sheet, and in his hand his smartphone was held up, the red record light still glowing. "I got it all, Alexa," he whispered, his eyes wide with terror and awe. "From the people like you comment, to the part about Pine Creek, Wyoming. I got all of it." For a full minute, neither of them moved. The only sound was the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen and the hum of the ice machine. Alexa stared at the phone in Miguel's hand as if it were a bomb. "Delete it," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "What?" Miguel looked at her, shocked. "Alexa, he can't treat you like that. He can't treat any of us like that. The world needs to see this." "You don't understand," Alexa said, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor, her head in her hands. "That wasn't just an insult. I'm a law student. I just publicly accused that man of a complex multi-state fraud. That wasn't a guess, Miguel. It's what my clinic has been working on for 6 months. I just blew the entire case. I violated attorney-client privilege. I could be disbarred before I even take the bar. I'm ruined." "You were fired, Alexa," Miguel said, kneeling beside her. Henderson screamed it. "You were an employee, not an attorney. And he humiliated you. He baited you. It doesn't matter. His lawyers. Alexa's mind was racing, replaying statutes and ethics violations. They'll destroy me. They'll say I slandered him. They'll sue me into oblivion. I'll lose my scholarship. Leo, God, I won't be able to pay for his treatments. Miguel was quiet for a moment. My uncle, he said softly, worked for a construction company in New Jersey. One of Colton's subsidiaries. They built a casino for him, and then Colton Capital declared the subsidiary bankrupt. Just poof. My uncle and 200 other guys lost their pensions. Everything. My aunt had to sell her house. He looked at the phone. This isn't just about a tip, Alexa. You said it yourself. This is about Pine Creek. This is about my uncle. This is about all the people like him that he's crushed. He held the phone out to her. It's your call. But I think you're wrong. I don't think you're ruined. I think you just lit the match. Alexa looked at the device. He was right. Colton's lawyers would come for her anyway. Her accusation was already out there. The associates, Henderson, they all heard it. Her only defense was the truth, and the truth needed sunlight. Okay, she said, her voice shaking but resolute. Post it. Post all of it. Miguel didn't upload it to his personal accounts. He was smarter than that. He sent the raw 12-minute file to a popular, anonymous, citywide blog known for exposing bad bosses and corrupt politicians. He titled the email, Billionaire Barnaby Colton, stiff arms waitress, gets accused of criminal fraud. They went back to the locker room. Alexa cleaned out her locker, the adrenaline fading, leaving behind a bone-deep, cold terror. Miguel walked her to the service elevator. For what it's worth, he said. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Alexa gave him a watery smile and rode the elevator down to the street. It was 11:30 p.m. Her phone was already dead. She took the subway home in a numb daze, the taunts from Colton's guests replaying in her head. I think I saw you on the subway. She got to her tiny fifth-floor walk-up, plugged in her phone, and fell into bed, too exhausted to even cry. She woke up 4 hours later, not to her alarm, but to a sound she had never heard before, her phone vibrating so violently on her nightstand that it sounded like a trapped hornet. She picked it up. 99 plus, missed calls, 99 plus, new text messages, 428 new emails, 99 plus notifications from every social media app. She opened her text messages. They were from law school classmates, old friends, her aunt in Florida, even her landlady. Alexa, is this you? Are you okay? Holy, Kinsley, call me. Now. Professor Davies. Her hands shaking, she opened a browser. The video was everywhere. The blog had posted it with the title, I don't tip people like you. Watch Billionaire Barnaby Colton get publicly accused of fraud by Waitress. From there, it had spread like wildfire. It was on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook. News vans were already parked outside the Gilded Quill, but they weren't just focusing on the no-tip part. They were focusing on Alexa's final words. Pine Creek, Wyoming. Apex Green Solutions. Colton Capital. The video had been dissected. Financial bloggers were already digging into Colton's green energy funds. Local news in Wyoming had picked it up. Someone had found Alexa's LinkedIn profile. Waitress is Hadford law student investigating Colton. The narrative was set. She wasn't a disgruntled employee, as Colton's PR team was already claiming in a frantic overnight press release. She was David, and she had just publicly named Goliath. A new email popped up. The sender made her blood run cold. From legalarcoltoncapital.com. Subject, cease and desist, defamation and slander. The email was short, brutal, and terrifying. It accused her of a malicious and fabricated public attack and informed her that a lawsuit for $50 million in damages was being filed against her, naming her, Miguel, and the blog that had first posted the video. The last line read, "We will take everything from you. We will ensure you never work in a coffee shop, let alone a law firm, ever again." Alexa dropped the phone. They were coming for her, and they had the resources of a small country. Just as the panic began to fully consume her, a new email appeared in her inbox. The sender name was one she recognized instantly. From Sarah Jenkins, subject. "I think we need to talk." Sarah Jenkins wasn't just any journalist. She was a two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter for the New York Chronicle. She was famous for toppling a corrupt senator and exposing a big pharma scandal that led to mass arrests. Alexa opened the email. "Ms. Kinsley, I just watched the video. I've been investigating Barnaby Colton and Apex Green Solutions for 8 months, but I've been stuck on the offshore links. You just provided the missing piece. My paper's legal team is prepared to offer you full protection and representation, pro bono, in exchange for your story and the research from your clinic. Do not speak to anyone else. They can't silence us all. S." Alexa read the email 3 times. A new feeling was dawning, pushing back the terror. It felt like hope. She looked at the threatening legal notice from Colton's lawyers, then back at the email from Sarah Jenkins. She typed one word and hit send. Okay. The next 48 hours were a blur. Alexa met Sarah Jenkins not in a coffee shop, but in the steel and glass fortress of the New York Chronicle's headquarters. She was ushered into a conference room filled with grim-faced lawyers who looked nothing like the slick, smiling partners at corporate firms. These were First Amendment lawyers. They looked like brawlers in suits. The head of the legal team, a man named Ben Carter, got straight to the point. Colton's lawsuit is a slap suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to scare you, to bankrupt you with legal fees until you shut up. It's textbook harassment, and we are going to fight it. But my clinic's research, Alexa said, her voice small. The Pine Creek files. Isn't that confidential? It was, Ben said, until your supervising professor, Professor Davies, gave us the green light. He called us this morning. He said, and I quote, "That girl is the best student I've had in 20 years. This is no longer a class project. It's a public interest emergency." He sent over the entire file. "He's backing you, Alexa. The whole university is." Alexa felt a wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled her knees. She wasn't alone. For the next 8 hours, she and Sarah Jenkins cross-referenced their notes. Alexa had the raw data, the property deeds from Wyoming, the incorporation papers for Apex Green Solutions, the bank transfers from the Cayman Islands account. Sarah had the human stories. She had whistleblowers from inside Colton Capital. She had environmental reports that Colton had paid to have buried. She had interviews with families in 3 different states, not just Wyoming, who had been ruined by identical green energy scams. "This is the key," Sarah said, tapping Alexa's file. "The Pine Creek case. We could never definitively link the offshore account to Colton's main fund. Your research does. This is the whole kingdom, Alexa." While they worked, the Chronicle's legal team filed a blistering motion to dismiss Colton's lawsuit, calling it a thuggish attempt by a billionaire bully to silence a whistleblower and a free press. The story was now the #1 topic in the world. The Gilded Quill was forced to issue a statement. They announced that Mr. Henderson had been terminated indefinitely and that they were reviewing their policies. They also sent Alexa a check for $528.54, the full amount of Colton's bill, with a note of apology. Miguel, represented by the Chronicle's lawyers, was safe. He'd become an overnight hero to service workers everywhere. But Barnaby Colton wasn't going down without a fight. He agreed to a prime-time interview on a major news network, determined to control the narrative. Alexa and the entire Chronicle team watched it live from the conference room. Colton was smooth, charming, and looked like the victim. "This was a coordinated attack," he said, his face a mask of pained sincerity. "A disgruntled, unstable young woman, angry about a perceived slight, decided to slander me. She colluded with a failing newspaper to fabricate this nonsense. My green energy funds are the most successful and transparent in the industry." "What about the families in Pine Creek?" the interviewer asked. "A tragedy," Colton said, shaking his head. "But it has nothing to do with me. That was a small, independent contractor that went bankrupt. I feel for them, I really do. But to link it to me, it's desperate." "So you're saying Alexa Kinsley is lying?" Colton gave a sad smile. "She's a law student. She's ambitious. She saw a chance to make a name for herself by attacking a public figure. I forgive her. But I will be clearing my name in a court of law." The room was silent. "He's good," Sarah muttered, her pen tapping furiously. "He's plausible. He's painting her as a hysterical, fame-hungry liar." "It's not enough," Ben Carter said, looking at his phone. "The video is too damning. His 'I don't tip people like you' line. That's what's killing him. The arrogance is undeniable." As if on cue, a new story broke. A U.S. senator from Wyoming, Senator Morrison, who had been a vocal supporter of the Apex Green Solutions project, was just asked about the video. His response was a weak, no comment. Then, a blogger uncovered campaign finance records. Senator Morrison had received over $1.5 million in donations from various PACs, all secretly funded by Colton Capital. "There it is," Sarah said, a grim smile on her face. "The political connection. He didn't just defraud the families. He bought the politicians to let him do it." The dam was breaking. The SEC, which had been ignoring complaints about Colton for years, was suddenly forced to act under the intense public spotlight. They announced a formal investigation into Colton Capital for securities fraud. The next morning, Sarah Jenkins's article dropped. It wasn't just an article. It was a 10-page, front-page exposé, complete with Alexa's research, Sarah's whistleblower testimony, and the damning campaign finance records. The headline was simple: "The Colton Papers, a billion-dollar empire of fraud." The avalanche had begun. The publication of the Colton Papers was not a gunshot. It was a nuclear detonation. The Monday morning edition of the New York Chronicle hit the stands with a thud that echoed from Wall Street to Washington. The front page was not a photo, but a wall of text under a simple, brutal headline: "The Colton Papers, a billion-dollar empire of fraud." Alexa, who had been staying in a secure room provided by the Chronicle, saw the article online at 3 a.m. Her hands were shaking. It was all there. Her research, her clinic's case files, woven seamlessly with Sarah Jenkins's whistleblower testimony and the damning environmental reports. Her name was in the third paragraph, not as a waitress, but as Alexa Kinsley, a Hadford University law student and investigator, whose work had provided the irrefutable link between the Pine Creek tragedy and Barnaby Colton's personal offshore accounts. The effect on the market was immediate and catastrophic. When the opening bell rang at 9:30 a.m., Colton Capital's publicly traded funds, the ones he used as a legitimate front, did not just dip. They fell off a cliff. The stock ticker, once a proud symbol of his Midas touch, was a waterfall of red. Financial news anchors, who just 72 hours earlier had lauded him as a titan, were now using words like criminal, implosion, and house of cards. The stock hemorrhaged 70% of its value before the exchange halted trading. But the real damage was happening behind the scenes. The SEC, humiliated by the Chronicle for ignoring complaints for years, moved with the speed of a predator. Armed with Alexa's research and Sarah's sources, they launched a formal, full-scale investigation. The associates who had been at the table with Colton, Jeffrey, and the others were the first to be hauled in. Their loyalty, built entirely on money and fear, evaporated under the threat of 30-year prison sentences. Jeffrey, sitting in a sterile federal interrogation room, was shown the file from Alexa's clinic. He saw the Cayman Islands bank transfers, the Shell Corporation's bylaws, the timeline. He realized the ship was not just sinking, it was already at the bottom of the ocean. He cut a deal. He confirmed everything. The Pine Creek project was a deliberate pump and dump scheme. He told them about Senator Morrison. And then, to save himself, he gave them more. This wasn't the first, he told the stunned investigators. Pine Creek was just the sloppiest. He laid out a pattern of identical green energy scams in 7 different states, dating back a decade. By Tuesday, the sharks were at the door of the corporation itself. The board of directors, the powerful men and women who had sat silently by, collecting massive paychecks while Colton pillaged the country, convened an emergency meeting. Their stock was worthless. Their investors were filing a dozen class action suits, and the SEC was now using words like racketeering. Their only move was to sever the infected limb. In a unanimous vote, they ousted Barnaby Colton as CEO and chairman of the company he had built. He was photographed leaving the Colton Capitol building for the last time. It was a stark, brutal contrast to the man who had entered the Gilded Quill. He wasn't flanked by sycophants. He was alone, his face a mask of purple, suffocating rage. He shoved his way through a mob of reporters, shouting questions. "Mr. Colton, what do you say to the families in Pine Creek? Is it true you've been fired? Barnaby, do you have anything to say to Alexa Kinsley?" He snarled, pushing a cameraman aside, and threw himself into the back of his Maybach. The image of his furious face, trapped behind the glass, became the new symbol of his name. The legal dominoes fell just as quickly. Ben Carter, the Chronicle's head lawyer, called Alexa that afternoon. His voice was grimly satisfied. "Good news," he said. "Colton's lawyers have formally withdrawn the $50 million slap suit against you and Miguel. They sent the notice by messenger, like cowards." Alexa sat down on the edge of her bed, the crushing weight of that lawsuit vanishing from her chest. It's over." "That part is," Ben said, and Alexa could hear the smile in his voice. "Now, our part begins. In 5 minutes, we are filing a class action lawsuit on behalf of the families of Pine Creek and the 6 other states Mr. Jeffrey was so kind to tell us about. We're naming Barnaby Colton, personally, as the defendant. The damages we're seeking total $1.2 billion. Alexa was speechless, but the day's events weren't over. Her phone rang again. The caller ID read, "Professor Davies." She answered, her voice trembling. "Professor?" "Alexa," he said, and his voice was thick with an emotion she'd never heard from him. Pride. "I just got out of an emergency meeting with the university's board of trustees. Am I in trouble?" she asked, the old fear still lingering. "Trouble?" He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Alexa, you're a hero, a consortium of alumni, led by a man whose father was ruined by Colton in the 90s, has set up a new fund, a legal defense and reparations fund for the Pine Creek families. As of an hour ago, it's at $10 million and it's still climbing." Alexa sank to her knees, her hand covering her mouth. Tears, not of fear, but of profound, agonizing relief, began to flow. "There's more," Professor Davies continued softly. "The board wanted me to inform you that your scholarship has been, well, it's been converted. It's now a full ride for your final semester, including a living stipend. They also voted to endow a new permanent clinic at the law school. It's to be funded by the interest from the new alumni endowment." Alexa was sobbing now, unable to speak. "They're calling it the Kinsley Clinic for Corporate Accountability," he finished. "And they've already offered you the director's position upon your graduation." She thought of Leo. This wasn't just about justice anymore. This was about survival. This was about a future, a stipend, a job, a clinic in her name. The name he had tried to tell her was worthless. The name of a function was now a symbol. The final blow, the one that ended the war, came on Friday. 1 week, almost to the hour, after she had confronted him in the restaurant. Alexa was in the Chronicle's main conference room, their war room, with Sarah, Ben, and the entire investigative team. They were tracking the SEC's movements, watching the U.S. Attorney's office. A hush fell as a producer on the news desk ran in and pointed to the wall of monitors. "Live feed," he said, "outside Colton's penthouse." It wasn't the chaotic mob of reporters from Tuesday. This was the cold, silent efficiency of the federal government. A line of dark sedans was parked at the curb. Men in dark blue jackets with FBI emblazoned on the back were streaming into the opulent lobby. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, a man who had been hounded by the press for moving too slowly, stepped up to a podium that had appeared out of nowhere. "This morning," the attorney said, his voice grim and final, "federal agents have arrested Mr. Barnaby Colton on multiple counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and violations of the Clean Water Act. His reign of financial terror is over." The feed cut to a new shot. Colton, his hands cuffed behind his back, was being led from the golden inlaid doors of his home. His custom suit was gone, replaced by a rumpled dress shirt and slacks. He looked stunned, his eyes wide with a disbelief that was only now hardening into a new, more profound rage. As they pushed him toward the lead car, a reporter broke the cordon and shouted the one question that mattered. "Mr. Colton! Mr. Colton! Do you have anything to say to Alexa Kinsley?" Colton stopped. He wrenched his arm against the grip of the federal agent. He turned and looked directly at the camera. Directly, it felt, at her. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was the look of a king who had just been checkmated by a pawn he had refused to even acknowledge was on the board. He said nothing. He didn't have to. The look was his final, impotent answer. Alexa watched the car door slam, watched it pull away into the anonymous city traffic. Her whole body was trembling. Sarah Jenkins put a hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Alexa," Sarah said softly. "You toppled an empire." Alexa shook her head, her gaze fixed on the screen. She thought of Miguel and his smartphone. She thought of Professor Davies and his files. She thought of the families in Pine Creek who had refused to give up. "No," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "We did." The trial of Barnaby Colton was not just a legal proceeding. It was a 6-month public autopsy of a corrupt empire. The courtroom was a theater of standing-room-only media, sketch artists, and the quiet, watchful families from Pine Creek, who had been flown in by the Victims' Fund. Alexa Kinsley sat not in the gallery, but at the prosecution's table. She had taken a leave of absence from Hadford, her final semester, to serve as a special advisor to the U.S. Attorney's office. She had lived and breathed this case for a year, first as a student, and now as a key architect of its prosecution. On the other side of the room sat Barnaby Colton. He was no longer the immaculate tycoon from the Gilded Quill. He was thinner, his expensive suits seeming to hang off his frame. But the arrogance remained, transformed into a cold, simmering disdain. He spent his days staring at the judge, a mask of bored contempt, refusing to even glance at the associates, Geoffrey first among them, who took the stand one by one to trade their testimony for lighter sentences. His defense was predictable, built on the very arrogance that had brought him down. His lawyers, a fresh team of the most expensive litigators in the country, painted him as a hands-off visionary, a man too busy with global macro strategy to be bothered with the day-to-day errors of his subordinates. They portrayed Alexa as a hysterical, fame-seeking student, an unstable and ambitious girl who, furious over a missed tip, had concocted a fantastical lie and colluded with a vulture journalist to destroy a great American icon. Then it was Alexa's turn to take the stand. The click of her heels on the marble floor was the only sound in the cavernous room. She felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, but she focused on only two, the prosecutors, and, for a brief, steadying moment, Barnaby Colton's. He met her gaze, and for a split second, his mask of boredom wavered, revealing the raw, cold hatred beneath. The prosecutor led her through the night at the restaurant. The insults, the demands, the final crushing humiliation of the 0 on the check. "And what did you do, Miss Kinsley?" "I followed procedure," Alexa said, her voice clear and strong. "I followed Mr. Colton to the elevator to inquire if the service had been unsatisfactory." "And what did he say?" "He told me, 'I don't tip people like you.'" A murmur went through the gallery. The words, already infamous from the video, landed like a physical blow in the quiet courtroom. Then came the cross-examination. Colton's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Patrick Shaw, approached her like a surgeon. "Miss Kinsley, you were a law student, correct? Working a waitress job to pay for your expenses?" "Yes." "And your brother was, and is, quite ill, with very expensive medical needs?" "Objection," the prosecutor snapped. "Relevance?" "It goes directly to motive, Your Honor," Shaw said smoothly. The judge overruled. "The witness will answer." "Yes," Alexa said, her jaw tight. "My brother's health is my responsibility." "So you needed that tip, didn't you?" Shaw pressed, leaning in. "A 20% tip on a $5,000 check. That's over $1,000. That would have been very helpful, wouldn't it?" "It would have been," Alexa agreed, her voice even. "You weren't just disappointed when you saw that 0, were you, Miss Kinsley? You were furious, enraged." "I was angry," Alexa corrected him, "but I was not out of control." "Oh, I think you were," Shaw sneered. "Isn't it true you invented this wild Pine Creek accusation simply to lash out? To hurt Mr. Colton, to damage his reputation, just as he had damaged your pride and your wallet?" "No," Alexa said firmly. "So it's just a coincidence?" Shaw threw his hands up, appealing to the jury. "That on the one night you get stiffed by a billionaire, you just happen to have this complex criminal conspiracy accusation ready to go? You expect this jury to believe that?" "It's not a coincidence," Alexa said, her voice dropping, drawing everyone in. "It's the reason." The prosecutor took over on the redirect. "Ms. Kinsley, please explain what you mean by that." Alexa turned, not to the lawyers but to the jury. She spoke to them, her voice ringing with the repressed frustration of 1,000 ignored letters. "For 6 months, my legal clinic at Hadford had been fighting for the Pine Creek families. We sent letters. We filed motions. We called every office at Colton Capital. We were ignored. We were told, in a letter from Mr. Colton's own legal department," she motioned toward the defense table, "that we were insects, and that Mr. Colton does not deal with such trivialities." She paused, then locked eyes with the man who had tried to erase her. "Mr. Colton's world is soundproof," she said. "He has built walls of money and lawyers and power to ensure he never has to hear the word no, that he never has to face the consequences of his actions. I realized, standing in that lobby, that all our letters, all our legal filings, they would never get through." "What changed?" the prosecutor asked. "He told me I was a function, not a person." And in that moment, I understood. He didn't see me. He didn't see the families in Wyoming. He didn't see my uncle, as my friend Miguel would later tell me. He saw functions. He saw insects. And the only way to get his attention, the only way to breach those walls, was to speak to him in the only language he understands, public humiliation. It was the only way to make him see. Her voice was low, but it filled the room. I needed him to know that the insects he was crushing, we were watching. And we knew exactly what he was doing. Her testimony was the closing argument. It shattered his entire defense. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Alexa stood with the prosecution team, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. The jury foreman read the verdict. On the count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, guilty. A gasp. On the count of securities fraud, count 1, guilty. On the count of securities fraud, count 2, guilty. With every guilty, Barnaby Colton seemed to shrink. The mask of contemptuous boredom didn't just crack, it dissolved. When the final guilty was read, for the environmental crimes in Wyoming, he slammed his fist on the table, a single, sharp sound of disbelief. His face, once a carefully curated bronze, was a mottled, terrifying white. Alexa let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for a year. She didn't feel triumph. She felt a profound, shuddering, bone-deep relief. Barnaby Colton was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. The judge, in his closing remarks, called him a financial sociopath and a cancer on the free market. His assets, those that weren't hidden beyond reach, were seized. His company, renamed and restructured, was forced to pay $1.2 billion into a victims' fund for the families in Pine Creek and the 6 other states he had defrauded. Weeks later, Alexa was in a new apartment, one with sunlight and space. She was packing away the last of her school things. On her new, proper desk, a framed photo showed her brother, Leo. He was at the new clinic in Denver, standing, his cheeks full, holding a certificate for lung capacity. He was thriving. Alexa had graduated, not just with honors, but as a legend. She had her pick of any law firm in the country. She had turned them all down. She was now the managing attorney for the newly endowed Kinsley Clinic for Corporate Accountability at Hadford. As she was cleaning out her old, worn-out backpack, her fingers brushed against a faded wallet, her old server's wallet. Tucked in a forgotten pocket was a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it. It was her final pay slip from the Gilded Quill. It showed her hours, her pay rate, and a final itemized line. Severance pay, B. Colton incident, $5,128, $50. A slow smile touched her lips. She ran her thumb over the printed text. It wasn't severance. It was a receipt. It was the most expensive, most consequential tip in history, the one he never intended to pay. It was the proof that people like you could and would demand to be paid in full. The currency just wasn't cash. It was justice. She didn't put the receipt in the box of old memories. She folded it neatly and slipped it into the inner pocket of her new blazer. She picked up her briefcase, filled with the files of her first new case, and walked out of her apartment. The city sunlight was bright, and the air was clear. She was no longer just Alexa, the waitress. She was Alexa Kinsley, the attorney, and she was just getting started. What did you think of Alexa's incredible story of justice? Do you believe the arrogant billionaire got what he deserved? It all started with two cruel, simple words: people like you. And it ended in the complete downfall of a corrupt empire. This story is a powerful reminder that there is no such thing as a powerless person. The people we underestimate, the people we dismiss, are often the ones with the most integrity and the keenest eyes. Alexa wasn't just a waitress. She was a warrior, and she proved that one voice, speaking the truth, can be louder than all the money in the world. We want to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite karma moment in this story? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories where arrogance is met with ultimate justice, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to see that David can and does still beat Goliath. And most importantly, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss the next story we have for you.